There are so many possibilities on how people go missing, but today we'll be focusing on people that might have been abducted by aliens, many of which that have never returned, saving the best case for last. Today's episode will be Tales of the Strange and Unexplained, which replaces Mysteries with the History as Jimmy Church is out of town today at Contact in the Desert. So I want to get started with our very first case that took place back in 2002. So this is actually specifically August 2nd, where Todd Sees, a resident in Pennsylvania, set out on a deer spotting expedition around 5 a.m. on Montour Ridge, and he informed his wife that he would return at noon. However, he never did. And so when Seas failed to come home, there was a massive search operation which involved over 200 volunteers, firefighters, and police officers. Now, anytime you are out on your own, it is always good to tell a trusted person when you will be back, especially if you're in a location that has no cell service, so that an incident such as this one, where you do not come home at your appointed time, that's when alarms can go off and then a search and rescue can take place. So 2 miles from C's home, near a power line at the top of the ridge, his four-wheeler was discovered. And surprisingly, and this is actually really odd detail to this case, search dogs were unable to detect his scent from the vehicle, which is an absolute rarity. The search continued for 2 days, covering a 6-mile area of the mountain, but there were no traces of Tom at all. And then on the evening of the second day, a helicopter spotted C's body in this thick, very thick brush. Remember that, because we're going to get back to that little detail. And it took rescuers 20 minutes to reach the area and confirm the identity of the body. Let's go back to that just for a second. This is actually a really important detail. If it's taking that much effort, 20 minutes, to go through brush to get to the body, right? That means your clothes are going to have dirt on it, maybe some tree sap, some green from all the leaves that you're brushing, maybe some ripped clothing. Okay, maybe a few little scratches, some red marks on your skin, any of it that's exposed. Keep that in mind because it's gonna be very relevant in just a moment. And so they come across the body, and he was only wearing underwear. And he wasn't bloated. Now, after a body is deceased, bloating can take place anywhere from 24 to 48 hours, but not for Tom. And when he left home, his wife remembers that he was fully dressed in boots, a camouflage vest, hat, socks, pants. His clothing was never found. He was only in underwear. And what's crazy is that his body didn't have any scratch marks on it. It didn't look dirty in any way. But there was one key factor that shocked these search and rescue members. And that was this immense level of shock on his face that was just stuck there on the deceased body. But what gets even more strange about this case is that within 30 minutes of the body's discovery, the FBI took over the investigation. And there were military type helicopters that were seen hovering over the area. This is where it gets the most bizarre, is that Tom's wife was not allowed to have the body, to see the body, to be in contact with the body for about 6 to 8 weeks, which is usually unheard of. Yes, you have very rare circumstances, but in a case like this, there would be no reason for the woman, the wife, to not have the body sooner. And so reporters suggest that one of Tom's shoes was found 75 feet up in a tree. And then, as I had mentioned earlier, the body was discovered under some underbrush and took all of the search and rescue members, firemen, policemen, 20 minutes to cut through all of that brush, yet the body had no external injuries. And additionally, the police removed the body rather quickly, which goes against, this is the kicker, goes against Pennsylvania's Coroner's Act that was created back in the 1970s and is still used today. And according to that law, the coroner must be notified immediately of any such death, and the body cannot be moved without their permission, except in certain circumstances. Now, is this classified as a certain circumstance where a lot of clothing isn't found on a body? The face is filled with shock. Shoes are 75 feet up in the air. How did they get up there? And the wife cannot see the body for 6 to 8 weeks. You can't have a proper burial when it's been that long, right? Well, you probably can, but it might be just more of an issue for those working in the morgue if the body's not placed under or in a freezer kind of deal. Now, there is even more to this case, which leads to the idea that Tom might have been abducted and then maybe just put back down, maybe even dropped here. There were 2 autopsies that were conducted, but neither of them could determine the cause of death. But there's more. Because even though, according to these autopsies, that they couldn't say, we don't really know what happened to him, it wasn't foul play, it wasn't a suicide, it was none of that. Then, shortly after those reports come out, we receive an official report back in 2002, and they say, you know what we finally found after the second autopsy is that there were drugs in his system, and that's probably what happened. Why didn't you find that in the first autopsy? It's evident. That is easy to see when you're dealing with a drug overdose. And what they found was a presence of cocaine. And so you don't need 2 autopsies to find that information. You can also see it on their skin, right? When someone takes a lot, or you might maybe just like 1 or 2 doses, and also oxycodone as well. It shows in the body. The body physically reacts to those things. But they didn't find any external injuries on Tom when these people came across the body. It took 2 autopsies to give us that answer of a drug overdose. Now, on top of that, because we are making a beautiful cake here with this very first case, is that in the area in Pennsylvania, neighbors, farmers, and others saw a UFO in the vicinity. This story just gets better as we continue on. And that is why we're starting off with this very first case. But we're moving on to our next one. And thank you for all of those that are catching this live. Hello, welcome. If you're enjoying the show so far, even this first case, hit that like button right down below. Cindy is saying portals. You know what? It could be, but then why would it come back? Why would Tom come back? And where did all of his clothes go minus his underwear? We've heard this consistently with strange disappearances where people are gone and what if they're ever found, right? They never have shoes, never have socks, almost never have pants. But in this case, Tom had underwear on. Very bizarre. It really, really is. Now, this next one is more of a famous case, but I thought, if we're covering this topic, we really have to talk about Frederick Valentich, which is also Jimmy's favorite case, or one of his favorite cases of all time. And because he's not here today, this case is in honor of him. So let's get into this one. For those that aren't familiar with this, because this took place back October 21st, 1978, where Frederick Valentich, and at the time he was a 20-year-old Australian pilot, vanished without a trace during a training flight over the Bass Strait between the Australian mainland and Tasmania. And Valentich was piloting a single-engine Cessna 182L aircraft with the intention of flying from Moorabbin Airport in Melbourne to King Island, a journey that should have taken just approximately over maybe a little bit under an hour. And then at around 7:06 p.m., Valentich made radio contact with the Melbourne Air Traffic Control, reporting an unidentified craft following him at an altitude of 4,500 feet. And he described the craft as having four bright lights and traveling at a very high speed. Now, over the next few minutes, Valentich provided further information to air traffic control, stating that the mysterious craft was orbiting right above him and that it had a rather shiny metal surface with a green light. And he mentioned that his engine was running roughly. Now, the situation took a rather eerie turn at about 7:12 p.m. when Valentich reported, quote, "It's not an aircraft." And then, as soon as he said that, the transmission was followed by 17 seconds of metallic scraping sounds. And Valentich's final transmission occurred at 7:12 p.m., after which there were no further communications. Now, despite an extensive air and sea search, after he was no longer in contact with air traffic control, people were rather quick to act on that and thought to themselves, maybe he crashed. We need to do an investigation and hopefully can find him or the aircraft. But neither of those two things were found. Then the Australian Department of Transport, they had to conduct their investigation over Valentich's disappearance, and they found absolutely no evidence of any other aircraft in the area at the time of the incident, nor could they explain the reported metallic scraping sounds. And the official report concluded that the reason for the disappearance could not be determined. This is a really big deal for anyone that wields power, but in this case, the Australian Department of Transport, to say we don't actually know what happened to him. That is very sketchy because people always want to have an answer, and those in power always want to give an answer to provide reassurance to the public. So when you say, I don't really know what happened here, there was a lot of red flags and a lot of issues with this. Now, to this day, people still search these waters and hoping to find his aircraft or maybe other aircraft that might have crashed, maybe even some treasure, and nothing has been found. And this incident took place back in 1978. That is more than enough time, hopefully, for there to be any debris to go on the mainland, to reach Tasmania, right, and to provide closure for his family and for his friends. This is one of the most famous cases when it comes to pilots and UFOs. And when we're dealing with this case, there's a lot of possibilities. Did this craft, this UFO, abduct him and his airplane? Did they go through a portal and Frederick just happened to go through that same portal at the same time? Did he actually crash in the water and we just haven't found his plane or his body yet? The possibilities are endless here. And until we get some more maybe details or tangible evidence, such as a body or a craft, maybe then we might receive some more sufficient answers. But for the time being, we just have this insane story, and we have the air traffic control, their communication with Mr. Valentich. But maybe you haven't heard of this next case that we're going to get into that also has to deal with pilots chasing a UFO and never coming back. I've been doing this for some time now, and I feel like I've covered a good amount of UFO cases, but this one, I was like, I don't remember ever covering this one. And you might think to yourself, you know what, Christina? I haven't heard this one either. And if you haven't heard it, hit that like button right down below. So here we're dealing with Felix Moncla and Robert Wilson. They were two United States Air Force pilots, and they disappeared on November 23rd, 1953, when pursuing a UFO over Lake Superior. Now, you should have your alarms going off at this moment because Lake Superior, and also when you're just dealing with the Great Lakes in general, there are a lot of UFO sightings that take place in that area. And this incident is known as the Kinross incident, and there have been no trace of the men or their aircraft. None of that was ever found. So, on the evening of November 23rd, 1953, the U.S. Air Defense Command radar detected an unidentified target near the Sault Locks, close to the border between Michigan and Canada. So, First Lieutenant Felix Moncla and Second Lieutenant Robert Wilson were dispatched in an F 89C Scorpion interceptor aircraft from Kinross Air Force Base to investigate the unknown object. We've been hearing this for decades, where a strange object is seen on radar, and they say, all right, guys, which pilot wants to go intercept this? And then some might raise their hand and they go for it. And 10 times out of 10, and I'm saying that with significant confidence, at least with the public stories, either the pilots are not able to catch up with them, they shoot a missile at it and it doesn't hit, or they go missing. Those are your options. So here, ground radar operators tracked the F 89C as it closed in on the unknown target. However, as the two blimps on the radar screen appeared to merge, dealing with the UFO and these pilots, the radar operators lost contact with both the UFO and the interceptor. Now, despite an extensive search conducted by both the US and the Canadian forces, no debris or wreckage from the plane was ever found, and the fate of those two lieutenants remain unknown. The U.S. Air Force initially claimed that Moncla and Wilson had crashed while pursuing a Canadian aircraft, but this explanation was later redacted because the Royal Canadian Air Force denied having any aircraft in the area at the time of the incident. And the U.S. Air Force accident report stated that the cause of the disappearance after that initial redaction, they said the disappearance was unknown. And here on screen, we're seeing one of the pilots, and then this previous image was an actual newspaper clipping of what took place. Now, some believe here that Moncla and Wilson may have been abducted by extraterrestrial beings, maybe even interdimensionals. Now we're in new times, right? And now others suggest that maybe they had accidentally flown into a parallel dimension, or experienced maybe even a time slip going through a portal, maybe like with Frederick Valentich, never to be seen again. But then you have UFO researcher Donald Kehoe suggested in his 1955 book that the F 89 may have been caught in a tremendous blast of explosive force from that UFO that they were attempting to intercept. However, the official explanation provided by the US Air Force stated that Moncla's jet crashed, and that the unknown craft, as I had mentioned earlier, was a Royal Canadian Air Force plane off course by about 30 miles. But Canada was saying, nah, don't get us involved in this. We helped you with the search and rescue mission, and you're pointing the finger at us saying it's our fault? I don't think so. I don't think we're going to be doing that here today or ever. And so that is why this case is classified as a strange disappearance, one that has yet to be solved, and a very good case to cover when talking about strange disappearances, UFOs, and possible abductions. You know what? I want to go a little further into this with this topic altogether. I have a few more cases for you, don't worry. But here, what would you think would happen? Let's attempt to the best of our ability, attempt to understand. Let's say these pilots were chasing a true UFO, something that maybe came from outer space or another dimension. Why would those entities want to capture these pilots? Is it as punishment? Is it as a message for people not to continue intercepting and pursuing these UFOs? Is it because they were like, "Hey, you guys want to go for a ride, go on a little vacay?" Is that it? Are they nice? Are they not nice? What are we doing here? Can we even place our human mentalities on entities that we can never understand? Do you see where I'm getting at here? We, of course, we want to attempt and rationalize the things and the cases and the mysteries that we cover here, but it's very difficult to place our human mind onto something that isn't human. I'm just going to leave that there. And maybe you can think about that for a moment, a little food for thought there. Getting into our next one, and I'll tell you, I'll be the first to admit I was not familiar with this next case. And here we're looking at Granger Taylor. And in a very small town in Duncan, British Columbia, a man named Granger Taylor vanished without another trace. We're dealing with all these traces here, and we just simply cannot find them. Back in November of 1980, leaving behind a note. And my goodness, is this case insane? Because he left a note to his parents that he was going to embark on a 42-month interstellar voyage aboard an alien spacecraft. I cannot make this stuff up. I wish. Look, I can't. This is a crazy story. So Granger Taylor was born back in October of 1948, and from a very young age, he demonstrated this exceptional interest for mechanics and engineering. And at just 12 years old, he built a fully functioning car and later rebuilt a bulldozer he had found as a rusted piece of junk in the bushes. Then, in 1975, Granger's life took this unexpected turn when he claimed to have had a life changing encounter with extraterrestrial beings. And he believed that he was taken aboard a spacecraft where he communicated telepathically with these aliens. And this alleged encounter had a rather profound impact on Granger, and he had become obsessed with the idea of building his own spaceship to explore the vast universe. I'm with you on that one. I don't think it's that crazy because same. Now, as Granger poured all of his energy, time, and resources into constructing what he called his spacecraft called the Galaxy, they say reporters and his family said that his mental health began to deteriorate and his behavior became increasingly erratic. Now, despite concerns from his family and friends, Granger refused to seek professional help and became increasingly withdrawn and detached from reality. Now, according to ufologist and author Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Granger's belief in extraterrestrial life was absolute. Remember, this took place back in the 1980s. The first exoplanet wasn't even found yet. Yes, there was a lot of science fiction. Yes, there were a lot of theories and ideas, but during this time frame, the conversation of aliens in space wasn't huge like it is today. And so he says that he often communicated that he had been receiving telepathic messages from an alien race who had chosen him due to his mechanical skills. Today, we would classify that probably as downloads, where he's receiving these messages on how to build certain things. And it's believed that Granger may have experienced a series of vivid dreams or altered states of consciousness which fueled his interest and aspiration to build his spacecraft Galaxy and to go on that 42-month voyage into space. I want to pause here just for a moment. Wouldn't you kind of do the same here? let's say you didn't have a family. Let's say it was just you and there were no consequences, right? Wouldn't you do the same if you were given messages, telepathic communication with beings, and you're like, hey, you want to go for a ride? The instant answer is yes. Of course. Why not? What do I have to lose? And the answer, if you don't have a family, is nothing. I don't blame this man, not one bit, but it goes into more detail. Because then on November 29th, 1980, at 32 years old, Granger left a note for his parents explaining that he was invited to go on this beautiful vacation into space, leaving Earth, but that he would return. Remember, 42 months, he was going to come back. But after writing the note, Granger never came back. His parents waited for him 42 months later, but there was no trace of him. No one could find him. No one knew if he was ever going to come back. And he left all of his personal belongings and even his beloved dog. That right there is an issue. Because if you have a pet, you want to come back to it. You want to see how it's doing. Today we call them as fur babies, right? You either take your pet with you on this voyage or you put it in good hands and you say, hey, baby, I'm going to come back. But Granger never came back. Now, the police investigation into Granger's disappearance found no indication of foul play or suicide, and witness reports reported seeing him in various locations prior to his disappearance, but there were no concrete leads that were ever found. And here's the crazy part. This took place in 1980. The investigation remains open to this day. Someone do the math. How old would he be right now today if he was born in, I told you, what is it, 1948? We're in 2024. Someone speed up that math because you're awesome. How old would he be today? And another question for you. Let's say he really did go on that voyage. Let's just have high hopes for this man and that he's living the time of his life in space with this new bundle of family. Would you want to come back? Would he want to come back, especially knowing how much time has passed? If he's even aware of that? I'm going to leave that there. I'm just going to put that there. Okay, so today he would be, we're seeing a range of numbers, but between 75 and 76. I guess depends on the month, right? I hear you. You guys are so smart. But spite, I'm feeling that one. Old. Yeah. I think that is yeah. This next one is actually an honorable mention. This next article that will be not article, but a case that we'll be covering. I'm so used to saying articles for strangest news of the week, but these are cases that we're covering today. Also, I love this image of George. It's a double exposure image, and it's just it's awesome. But this next one's an honorable mention because there was a rather famous author who went missing for 11 days, sparking one of the largest manhunts in history during its time. Do you know who I'm talking about? Can you tell from this image on screen? I'm talking about Agatha Christie, the renowned British crime novelist who wrote books such as And Then There Were None in 1939, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, and Death on the Nile. I don't know about you, but it was required for my school reading to read the book And Then There Were None. It is a fat, thick textbook, but you know what? I was hooked on every page back in what is this? The 7th grade. It's a brilliant book. Her writing is spectacular. And so she vanished on the evening of December 3rd, 1926, leaving her home in Berkshire. Hopefully I said that right. After a fight with her husband by the name of Archie Christie. And her disappearance, as I had said earlier, triggered one of the most extensive searches in British history involving over 1,000 police officers, 15,000 volunteers, and several airplanes. That shows you how inspirational and monumental her books were to these people to have such an immense search and rescue team. So Christie's car was later discovered abandoned near a chalk mine in the vicinity of Newlands Corner, Surrey. And the search for Christie made headlines worldwide, captivating the public's attention. Now, 11 days later, on December 14th, 1926, she was found at the Swan Hotel, also known as the Old Swan Hotel, in Harrogate, Yorkshire. Interestingly, she had registered at the hotel under the name Miss Teresa Neal, which was the surname of her husband's mistress. Dun dun dun. Now, upon being found, Christie claimed to have suffered from amnesia and had no recollection of the events that transpired during her disappearance. The 11 days that she was gone, she has no memory. She doesn't even know how she got into the hotel. She doesn't even know how she pinned the name of her husband's mistress at the hotel. Do you see the patterns here? With a lot of alleged alien abductions, we see missing time, gaps in memory, and getting into locations that you have no idea how you got there. Is this what happened to Miss Agatha Christie? Was she abducted by aliens? One of the most famous murder mystery authors of all time. Could you imagine? That'd be insane. That'd be a beautiful book. But there's more to this because it was so intense for her. She was so freaked out about this encounter or incident, whatever happened to her, that she actually omitted it from her autobiography. She's like, I am not putting that in there. Everyone's asking her, where were you these 11 days? Reporters, the paparazzi, they're all bombarding this woman of like, where have you been? I know you got into a fight with your husband. You found out about the mistress, but are you going to tell us where you went? People were worried. You have such a ginormous fan base. She's like, nah, I don't know what happened. I'm not going to tell you what happened, and you will never know. And here we are today, almost 100 years later, and we have no idea what happened to her. It would have been such a great book. I would have bought the book. I would have gone back in time with my TARDIS to buy her book, the first copy. But no, she decided not to cover this, which I just think adds another layer of mystery to this. Now, Cindy says, could it have been rehab? That's an interesting idea. I know people have got into that possibility, but because she never wanted to address it, we simply don't know. And that's why this particular story is merely an honorable mention, because we don't have a lot to go on except for the three real patterns that I mentioned when it comes to alleged alien abductions: missing time, in a strange location, gaps in memory. It's so good. Like, I would have loved to have met her, to be honest with you. I think I'd like to know why she wrote the books that she did, where she got the inspiration from, and what happened during those 11 days she supposedly disappeared. What happened? I want to do regression hypnosis on her, not me, but I would get someone to do it. Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you want to do the same? Probably. Out of all of the stories that we covered today, which one was your favorite? Let me know in the live chat. Please let me know in the comments as well. Which cases that we covered today that you didn't know about? I admitted to you mine. I have no problem doing stuff like that because I want to be the first to tell you I didn't know about this case. And if you did know, we're on the same boat here. Let's see. Check says she entered the Twilight Zone. Ooh, that's a good one. Love it. Cassidy says she got a brain parasite from eating undercooked pork. Is that true? Is that the story? I didn't read that anywhere. That's interesting. Jonathan said that one that you covered about Agatha Christie, that was a good one. Or are you referring to all of them? Because if so, brownie points. They were all good. Let's see. Who else had a favorite case or a favorite story that they want to stay in the live chat? Let's see. Tyler says all of them. Good. That's a good one. I do want to state that tomorrow is going to be strangest news of the week, but it's going to be earlier in the day due to my crazy work schedule. So please make sure to hit that notification bell so you do not miss the live show, and subscribe if you haven't already. Here is the QR code for all of my social media links, and where you can find my space ambient music channel called Cosmic Portals, or Factsophical, where I share crazy, fun, and interesting facts. I want to say thank you to everyone that watched this live, all the YouTube members, Patreon supporters, and of course, all of my amazing moderators. And if you didn't know, before you head out, I do write articles for all of the shows that you see right here. You can find it on my website at strangeparadigms.com or on Medium at Cristina Gomez, and there is no H in Cristina. That is it for today. I will see you tomorrow. Be safe, and remember, keep your eyes on the skies. If you enjoy the strange and the mysterious, UFOs, the paranormal, and cryptids, this channel is for you. So make sure to subscribe, as I do 3 videos right here every single week, and hit that notification bell so you do not miss any of the bonus content I post right here.